So say you're me and you're on your Thanksgiving break and you don't want to do that uber annoying video on the Columbian Exchange in Costa Rica your history teacher was so kind to assign. But even though it's not Thanksgiving yet and you're actually a vegetarian, you start to think about turkey and how that type of fowl is actually native to the Americas. And that gets you wondering what common foods you eat on Thanksgiving are from the old world. And that's sort of interesting, so you decide to just make the video and get it over with. You'll probably be more happy once you finish anyway. On September 18th, 1502, on his fourth and final voyage, Christopher Columbus himself was the first explorer from the Old World to come to Costa Rica. Now, before we proceed, I want to take a moment to appreciate this great navigator and the band of rapists and pillagers he led to the New World. First, let's look at the announcement he and his comrades made to the natives they found upon arrival. The Spanish requisition was read to the natives in Spanish, even though none of them spoke a word of it. Ridiculous, right? I implore you to recognize the Church as a lady, and in the name of the Pope, take the King as Lord of this land and obey his mandates. If you don't do it, I tell you that with the help of God, I will enter powerfully against you all. I will make war every way and everywhere I can. I will subject you to the yoke and obedience to the Church and majesty. I will take your women and children and make them slaves. The deaths and injuries that you will receive from here on will be your own fault and not that of his majesty, nor of the gentlemen that accompany me. Okay, I'm sorry, but I don't think how ridiculous that is requires any explanation. And it just gets better. Columbus wrote in his journal on Friday, October 19th, that the natives of the New World were so poor and trifling that a quantity of gold appears to them to be a great amount. He also remarked that they would make fine servants, and that the natives were so savage that he had seen a boy of the crew purchasing javelins from them with platters and broken glass. And it's not like all men of the time had this awful view on race. The 16th century historian Bartolomé de las Casas had a very different view on the natives of the New World, writing that, of all the infinite universe of humanity, these people are the most guileless, the most devoid of wickedness and duplicity. Now, I'm not a real historian or anything. In fact, I wouldn't even be making this video if it wouldn't affect my grade. But I definitely think that this Las Casas guy has a much superior view on all of this than the man called Columbus we celebrate every year. So let's take a moment to look at the Columbian Exchange in a broad sense. All of this still applies to Costa Rica, however, it's not unique to it. First, let's clarify what the Columbian Exchange even is, because honestly, I'm not sure if it's common knowledge. The Columbian Exchange is the movement of humans, and everything that humans tend to bring with them, that occurred when Columbus and the other Europeans found their way to the New World for the first time. Okay, maybe not the first time, but for all intents and purposes, we're going to ignore the Vikings. So language is pretty obvious. Languages like Spanish and Portuguese came along with the explorers and are still widely spoken today. Explorers and sailors are not the only people who came to the New World. Many slaves, mostly of African descent, were brought with them. The Native Americans had few animal servants before the Columbian Exchange. They had dogs, 2 varieties of South American camels, the guinea pig, and several kinds of fowl. The Old World explorers brought beasts of burden, such as horses and even oxen, which were innovations to the thus far manual labor of the Native Americans. Explorers found an abundance of new crops in the New World. Most importantly were potatoes and maize. However, beans, squash, chili peppers, tobacco, kennepods, peanuts, tomatoes, sweet potatoes, manioc, avocado, and pineapple, along with many others, were also discovered. From Europe came products such as bananas, citrus, coffee, grapes, onions, peaches, rice, sugarcane, and even wheat. Finally, we get to diseases. Because of a lack of exposure, diseases from the opposite continent were quite deadly to the locals, which is one of the reasons Europeans brought slaves with them to the New World. They needed to replenish the populations of natives to do their bidding. Common diseases from the New World were mainly syphilis, polio, hepatitis, and encephalitis, while ones from the Old World include smallpox, measles, malaria, yellow fever, influenza, and chickenpox. So now let's return to Costa Rica, where due to disease and violence, only 1% of the population are of indigenous heritage. The rest of the population is mostly white. However, there are 7,000 descendants of African slaves, as well as other ethnicities. Luckily, Costa Rica is known for its good relations among races. Before the arrival of Columbus, Costa Rica was populated by 4 major tribes, the Caribs, Borucas, Chibchas, and Piquis, although there is evidence of the Mexican Olmec and the Nahuatl civilizations having some influence. Soon after Columbus came to Costa Rica, he and many other explorers became interested in more wealthy places such as Mexico and Peru, and it wasn't until 1562 that Costa Rica was successfully colonized by Juan Vasquez. The population of Costa Rica is not the only thing that was affected by the Columbian Exchange. Modern-day Costa Rica produces many crops that didn't even exist there before the Europeans came. The principal cash crops are coffee, bananas, cacao, and sugarcane, out of which only cacao is a native plant. In 2001, coffee and bananas alone accounted for 31% of the exports, with values of $163.4 million and $501.1 million, respectively. Unfortunately, the growing agriculture industry resulting from the Columbian Exchange hasn't gone without a price. 20,000 acres of land are deforested in Costa Rica each year. It wouldn't seem so horrible if every acre went to creating beautiful farms and plantations such as this one located just south of Aresi. However, the fact that only 1/4 of Costa Rica's original forest cover is still intact and the majority of the rest has been turned into ruined places like the one in the other photo of Monteverde is appalling to me. The Columbian Exchange certainly changed things, for better or for worse, it's hard to say. I certainly do not condone Columbus's actions in any way, shape, or form, but it's hard to imagine how drastically different our world would be without him.